A woman pretended to be a stranger's sister for just one night to save him from losing everything. But no one expected that small lie to turn into 5 long years of a hidden life, forbidden feelings, and a secret that almost destroyed them both. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy. Clara Bennett had been on her feet for 11 hours when the man in the gray coat walked into the diner. It was a Tuesday in late October, and the wind off the Boston harbor was sharp enough to cut through wool. The bell above the door rang. She didn't look up. She was carrying 3 plates on one arm and a coffee pot in the other, and her right shoe was rubbing a blister into her heel. Just keep moving, she told herself. 2 more hours, and then the rent. The man sat in the corner booth, the one near the window, and he didn't pick up the menu. He just stared out at the street like he was waiting for something terrible to happen. Clara noticed him because no one ever sat there. The vinyl was cracked, the table wobbled, and the light above it flickered. Regulars avoided that booth. He chose it anyway. She approached with her notepad. "Coffee?" she asked. He looked up at her, and for a second she forgot what she had said. His eyes were the kind of tired that money could not fix. He was maybe 35, clean-shaven, wearing a watch that cost more than her car. "Please," he said. "Black." She poured. Her hand was steady, even though she had not slept properly in 3 nights. Her younger brother Eli was sick again, and the doctor's bill from Monday was still sitting unopened on the kitchen counter. "Are you ready to order, sir?" she asked. "Not yet." He paused. "Could you stay a moment?" Clara blinked. "I'm working. I know. I'll pay for your time." He pulled a folded $100 bill from his coat and laid it next to the sugar. Clara stared at it. She did not pick it up. "Not yet." "Sir, I'm not that kind of. It's not that kind of conversation." He almost smiled. "I just need you to listen. And I need to ask you something insane." She looked across the diner. Frank, the cook, was hunched over the grill. The only other customers were 2 old men arguing about baseball. She had 10 minutes before her next round of refills. "Talk fast," she said. The man took a breath. "My name is Adrian Vance. In about 40 minutes, I'm supposed to walk into a private dinner at the Boylston Club. My uncle is going to be there. My mother is going to be there. The board of my father's company is going to be there. And if I walk in alone, I lose everything my father spent his entire life building." Clara folded her arms. "And this is my problem. Because 20 years ago, my older sister disappeared. Her name was Eleanor. She was 19. I was 14. She got into a fight with my father and walked out the front door and never came back. There were rumors she moved to California or Mexico, or that she changed her name. My father searched for her until the day he died. He left a will. He left almost everything to her." Clara was listening now. She didn't realize she had stopped pouring coffee. "When my father passed last spring," Adrian continued, "the will activated a clause. If Eleanor doesn't return and accept her share within 6 months, every dollar passes to my Uncle Marcus. Not to me. Not to my mother. To him. And Marcus will sell the company in pieces. He'll fire 2,000 people. He'll tear apart everything my father built. So find your sister." I tried. I hired 3 different investigators. There are no records of an Eleanor Vance anywhere on this continent for the last decade. His voice cracked, just slightly. "The deadline is in 9 days." Clara set the coffee pot down. "I still don't see why you're telling me this." Adrian looked at her for a long moment. "Because you have her eyes." Clara almost laughed. "Excuse me? I'm not joking. I've been driving around this city for 2 days, looking at women in their early 30s. I've sat in coffee shops, libraries, train stations, And then I walked past your window an hour ago, and I saw you laughing at something a customer said, and I stopped walking. You have the exact same eyes, the same hair color. You're the right age. You're the right height. Anyone who hasn't seen her in 20 years would believe you." Clara stared at him. Her mouth opened, then closed. "Are you asking me to commit fraud? I'm asking you to walk into one dinner. One. You sit at the table. You say almost nothing. You let me do the talking. You let my uncle see you, my mother see you, the board see you. You go home. That's it. One night. And tomorrow morning, the lawyers will start the paperwork that protects 2,000 jobs. And then what? Then your sister magically disappears again? Then she goes back to her quiet life. She wants no contact. She signs over her inheritance to me. Marcus loses his case. The company is saved. It's already been arranged with the attorneys. We just need her to appear, once, in public for the family." Clara picked up the $100 bill. She looked at it. She thought of Eli. She thought of the medicine they could not afford. She thought of the unopened envelope on her counter. "How much?" she heard herself ask. Adrian Vance did not blink. $50,000. Tonight. Cash. For one dinner. The coffee pot in Clara's other hand trembled, just once. Clara set the coffee pot on the empty table beside her. She wiped her palms on her apron. $50,000. She had never seen that number written next to her own name. It was the kind of number that solved entire lives. It paid for Eli's medicine for the next year. It cleared the back rent. It bought time, and time was the one thing she had never been able to afford. "You're lying," she said quietly. "Stand up." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Stand up. Right now. Walk to that window. Then walk back." He did. He moved like a man who had been raised in rooms with high ceilings, who had never once in his life worried about whether a door would be locked against him. He came back to the booth and sat down. "Okay," he said. "What was the point of that? I wanted to see if you would walk away. People who lie walk away when they're called on it." Clara slid into the booth across from him, even though her shift was not over. "Tell me why you trust me. You don't know me." "I don't trust you," Adrian said. "I don't have time to. I have 9 days. You have a face that could save my family. I'm offering you money. That's not trust. That's desperation meeting opportunity. Charming. I'm not trying to be charming. I'm trying to be honest. If you say no, I find someone else, and I keep looking. If you say yes, you're in a car with me in 30 minutes. Clara looked down at her hands. Her knuckles were red from dishwater. There was a small burn on her wrist from the coffee machine. She thought of her mother, dead 3 years now, who used to say that desperate offers always cost more than they promise. She thought of Eli, asleep in a too-small apartment, with a fever that wouldn't break. "What if someone recognizes me?" she asked. "No one will." Eleanor left when she was 19. Her last photograph was taken in 1999. The family will see what they want to see. The board never met her. The press never photographed her after she was 11 years old. My father destroyed most of her photographs after the fight. There are exactly 4 people alive who knew her well, and 3 of them are at this dinner tonight. And the 4th? My uncle's wife. She's in Italy. She won't be back for 2 months. And after tonight? After tonight, you go home. We never speak again. You change your phone number if you want. The money is yours. The story ends. Clara took a long breath. I want it in writing. I can't put it in writing. If there's a contract, there's evidence. Then I want the money in my hand before we walk into that dinner. Not after. Before. Adrian almost smiled. Smart. And one more thing. She leaned forward. If something goes wrong, if anyone gets violent or threatens me, I walk. No questions. You don't follow me. You don't call me. I get out, and the money stays mine." "Agreed." "Then yes," Clara said. The word felt strange in her mouth, light and heavy at the same time. Adrian exhaled, slowly, like he had been holding his breath since he walked in. "Thank you." He stood up. "Where do you live?" 3 blocks away. Get your things. Pack a small bag, just in case. I'll have a driver pick you up in 20 minutes. He'll bring you to a hotel where my stylist is waiting." A stylist? Eleanor was raised in old money. She wouldn't wear that. He nodded gently at her uniform. "It's nothing personal. Tonight you have to look like you've never worried about a bill in your life." Clara stood up too. Her legs felt unsteady. "Adrian." "Yes? What was she like?" "Your sister." He paused at the door. The wind hit him in the face when he opened it. "She was loud," he said. "She fought with everyone. She loved horses and she hated rules. She thought our father was a tyrant." He looked away. I think she was right. Then, he was gone. Clara walked back behind the counter on legs that didn't feel like hers. She told Frank she had a family emergency. He waved her off without looking up. She walked the 3 blocks home through wind that should have woken her up but didn't. Eli was asleep on the couch, a blanket pulled up under his chin. She kissed his forehead. He felt warm, but not feverish. She wrote a note for Mrs. Connolly next door, asking her to check in. She packed a small bag with 2 changes of clothes, her toothbrush, and a photograph of her mother. She didn't know why she packed the photograph. A black car pulled up at the curb at exactly 6:15. The driver did not introduce himself. He opened the back door. She got in. The hotel was downtown on a high floor with a view of the harbor. A woman named Helene was waiting with 3 racks of clothing and a makeup case the size of a tackle box. Helene did not ask Clara any questions. She measured her shoulders, her waist, her wrist. She held a midnight blue dress against her body, frowned, then chose a soft cream one instead. "Old money doesn't wear blue at a private dinner," she muttered. "Not in this family." An hour later, Clara stood in front of a full-length mirror. The woman looking back at her did not work in a diner. The woman looking back at her had soft, brushed-out hair, a string of small pearls, a silk dress that draped instead of clung, and the still watchful face of someone who had been taught from childhood to never reveal what she was thinking. "Now," Helene said, "remember, you are not Clara tonight. You are Eleanor. You are home." The Boylston Club sat behind a wrought iron fence on a quiet, lamp-lit street. From the outside, it did not look like a building at all. It looked like a house that had decided, sometime in the 1800s, that it would never let the world inside. The car pulled up at the curb. Adrian was already there, waiting on the steps in a dark suit, his hands in his pockets. When the door opened and Clara stepped out, he froze. For a second, just 1 second, he forgot to breathe. "What?" she whispered. "Is something wrong? Is the dress wrong?" "No." He shook his head once. "You look exactly like her. It's frightening." Clara felt her stomach turn. She gripped the small clutch in her hand a little tighter. He offered her his arm. She took it. His sleeve was wool and warm. "Listen to me," he murmured as they climbed the steps. "Marcus will test you. He'll ask things only Eleanor would know. I've written a small list for you to read in the powder room when we get inside. If you don't know an answer, look at the floor and say, 'I don't want to talk about that,' in a tired voice. Eleanor used to do that. Everyone will accept it. The board doesn't know any details. My mother will cry. Don't be alarmed. Just hold her hand. Let her speak first." Adrian. "Yes? Why didn't you tell anyone we were coming? Why an ambush? Because if I warned them, Marcus would prepare. He'd hire experts. He'd bring in lawyers tonight. I want him surprised. I want him angry. Angry people make mistakes. He squeezed her elbow gently. "Breathe. You can do this." The doorman bowed slightly when he saw Adrian. They walked into a foyer of dark wood and warm chandeliers. The carpet was so thick, Clara could not hear her own footsteps. A waiter took her coat. She caught a glimpse of herself in a tall gilt mirror. She did not recognize the woman in the mirror at all. Adrian led her down a long hallway lined with old portraits. At the end of it, 2 heavy doors stood open. Inside, a long dining table was set for 9 people. 6 were already seated. 3 turned to look. The room went silent. An older woman with white hair and a soft pink shawl stood up so fast that her chair scraped backward. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Eleanor?" Her voice broke on the second syllable. "Mother," Adrian said gently. "I have someone with me tonight. Please sit down before you fall." The woman did not sit. She walked, slowly, around the table. Her eyes never left Clara's face. Clara forced herself to stand still. She had practiced this in the mirror at the hotel. She had practiced not blinking too much. The woman stopped a foot away from her, looked into her eyes, then reached up and touched her cheek. "Oh, my baby," she whispered. "Oh, my baby. You came back." Clara had not been prepared for this. She had not been prepared for any of it. The woman's eyes were full of so much hope, so much grief held back for so many years, that Clara's throat closed. Without meaning to, without planning to, she put her hand over the older woman's hand on her cheek. "I'm sorry," Clara whispered. It was the most honest sentence she had spoken all day. The woman pulled her into a hug. Clara closed her eyes. Across the room, a man in his 60s slowly set down his wineglass. He had silver hair, a narrow jaw, and the eyes of a hawk that had spotted movement in tall grass. Marcus Vance. He did not stand up. He did not smile. He just watched. "Adrian," he said calmly, "what a remarkable surprise. Won't you introduce us?" Adrian guided his mother gently back to her seat and pulled out a chair for Clara. Clara sat. The wineglass in front of her was already filled. She did not touch it. "Uncle Marcus," Adrian said. "May I present my sister, Eleanor?" She came home. Marcus tilted his head. "After 20 years, how convenient." "Marcus, please." Adrian's mother wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. "Not tonight." 20 years of silence, Marcus continued, ignoring her. 20 years of nothing. No phone call, no letter, not even a postcard when your father was dying. And then, 6 days before the inheritance closes, you appear in a beautiful dress. His eyes moved up and down Clara's body. How remarkable. Clara lifted her chin. She thought of her mother, who had worked 2 jobs and never once let her be intimidated by anyone. "I'm not here for the money," she said quietly. The room went still. "Then why?" Marcus said softly. "Are you here?" Clara looked across the table at him. "Because my brother asked me to come." It was the truth, in a strange way. It was the only truth she had. Adrian, beside her, did not look at her, but she felt his shoulder relax by half an inch. Marcus's mouth moved into something that was not quite a smile. "Tell me, Eleanor, where did you live?" "All these years. Different places." "Specifically, I don't want to talk about that." She kept her voice flat, tired, the way Adrian had told her. "Not tonight." Where did you go to school, after?" "I didn't." "What was the name of your horse?" Clara's stomach dropped. She had not been given a list yet. "I don't want to talk about that either." "Oh, come now." Marcus leaned forward. "Surely you remember the name of your own horse. You loved that animal. Your father bought it for your 12th birthday." Adrian opened his mouth. Clara put her hand lightly on his wrist under the table and squeezed. She looked Marcus dead in the eye. "His name was Hadrian," she said. Marcus's face did not move, but behind his eyes, Something flickered. Something cold. Adrian's mother let out a small, broken laugh. Hadrian. You remembered. Of course you remembered. She reached across the table and took Clara's hand. Your father named him. He used to joke that the horse and the emperor had the same temper. Clara breathed out, slowly. She had guessed. She had guessed based on the way Adrian had said earlier that his father was a tyrant, and she had remembered from a long-forgotten history class that Hadrian had been a Roman emperor. It had been the wildest gamble of her life. It had landed. Marcus leaned back. He picked up his wine. He drank slowly. How charming, he said. Truly. Family reunions are so moving. But his eyes did not leave her face for the rest of the meal. The dinner was 8 courses and 3 hours long. Clara ate very little. She let Adrian's mother do most of the talking. She nodded when she was supposed to nod. She squeezed the older woman's hand when it trembled. When the board members spoke to her about the company, she said quietly that she trusted her brother to handle those decisions. When the toast was made, she lifted her glass without drinking from it. By the time the dessert plates were cleared, 2 members of the board had taken Adrian aside and quietly told him they would not support Marcus's motion to liquidate. The inheritance clause would activate in Eleanor's favor. The company would survive. It was done, or it should have been done. As Adrian led Clara back through the long hallway toward the door, Marcus caught up with them. Adrian. A word. Adrian stopped. Not tonight, Marcus. Tonight. Marcus's voice was very calm. Or tomorrow morning, when I file a motion in probate court demanding a DNA test with full press coverage. Clara felt the floor tilt under her feet. Adrian's face did not change, but his hand closed around hers, hard. Walk to the car, he said quietly to Clara. I'll be 1 minute. She walked. She did not look back. She got into the back of the black car. The driver, the same one as before, did not ask any questions. He simply sat behind the wheel and waited. Through the tinted window, she could see Adrian and Marcus on the steps. They were speaking in low voices. Marcus was smiling. Adrian was not. After 3 minutes, Adrian came down the steps and got into the car. He shut the door. The driver pulled away from the curb. Adrian did not speak for a full block. When he finally did, his voice was very quiet. He knows. Clara's mouth went dry. He knows for sure? He suspects. He has no evidence, but he's going to demand a DNA test in court. If we refuse, the inheritance is frozen for a year of litigation. If we agree, you'll be exposed in 72 hours. Clara looked out the window. The lights of the city smeared past. Then, I disappear tonight, she said. I take the money and I go. You can tell the family Eleanor changed her mind, or that she's traveling, or anything. I never come back. You'll find another way. Adrian closed his eyes. Clara, he'll put you on the front page of every paper in Boston by Friday. He won't let this go. He's been waiting 20 years for this inheritance. He thinks it's his right. Then what? She said. What do you want from me? Adrian was quiet for a long time. Stay. Clara turned to look at him. Stay? 6 months. Move into the house. Live as Eleanor. Be seen at family events. Sit on the company foundation board. Give Marcus nothing to attack. After 6 months, the inheritance is final and legally untouchable. Then we say Eleanor has decided to travel again. You disappear quietly, with proper paperwork. You walk away with a real life. New identity if you want one. Property. Whatever you need. 6 months. She almost laughed. You're asking me to lie to your mother for 6 months. To the press. To the courts. To the company. Yes. What about my brother? My real brother. Eli. He's 9 years old. He's sick. I can't just disappear from his life for 6 months. Bring him. Clara blinked. What? Bring him to the house. Tell people He's your son from a quiet marriage that ended badly. No one will question it. He'll have a doctor, a private school, anything he needs. So will you." She turned to look at him fully. The streetlights flickered across his face in long, slow bars of gold. He was not smiling. He was not selling her anything. He looked like a man who had run out of cards in his hand and was throwing the last one down. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked. "What? You said your father destroyed Eleanor's photographs. You said he searched for her until he died. So why do you care about saving his company? It sounds like he was cruel to her. It sounds like he was cruel to you." Adrian looked down at his hands. "My father was many things," he said quietly. He was a tyrant in his own house. But he employed 2,000 people. He paid for their children's education. He kept a town in New Hampshire alive after the mill closed. When my mother had her stroke, he sold half his art collection to pay for her care. He was the worst father I have ever met, and he was a good man to almost everyone else. If Marcus takes the company, all of that ends. Clara sat with that for a long moment. 6 months, she said. 6 months, he agreed. She looked out the window at the lights of the city sliding past. Somewhere out there, her brother was asleep under a thin blanket, and she was about to change the shape of his life with a decision made in the back of a stranger's car. Then, take me home so I can pack my brother. The Vance house was not a house. It was a stone building from the 1860s that sat on 12 acres of land outside the city, with a long driveway lined with maples that were burning orange in the late autumn light. There were 2 staircases, a library with a ladder on rails, a music room no one used, and a kitchen with 2 refrigerators. Eli, half asleep when they pulled up at midnight, opened his eyes and whispered, "Clara, is this a castle?" "No, baby," she whispered back. "It's just a house." But she did not believe it herself. The housekeeper, a woman in her 60s named Mrs. Halloran, was waiting at the front door with a small lamp. She had been told that Eleanor was returning home with her young son. She did not ask any questions. She simply showed them to a wing on the 2nd floor that had been kept closed for 20 years. Clara stepped into a bedroom that smelled of cedar and lavender. There were writing ribbons on the wall, blue and gold, from a girl who had won them in 1996 and 1997. There was a wooden hairbrush on the dresser, with strands of red hair still caught in the bristles. Clara closed the door behind her and stood in the dark, and for a moment she could not move at all. She felt like she had broken into the bedroom of a ghost. The next morning, at breakfast, Adrian's mother held Eli's small hand across the table and asked him gentle questions about his favorite foods. She did not seem to notice that he and Clara looked nothing alike. She did not seem to notice anything except that her daughter, after 20 years of silence, was sitting 4 feet away from her, drinking coffee, alive. After breakfast, Adrian took Clara aside in the library. He had a thick folder for her. "Everything you need to know about Eleanor," he said. Her childhood, her friends, her old writing instructor, her doctors, the names of the dogs we owned, the argument she had with our father. Memorize what you can. Lie about the rest. Clara took the folder. "Who knows the truth? My personal attorney." He drew up an emergency adoption document for Eli. "As far as the state is concerned, you are now Eleanor Margaret Vance, and Eli is your legal son. The paperwork is filed. It's clean. How did you do that in one night?" Adrian gave her a small, weary smile. "You'd be surprised what money can do in one night." She nodded slowly. "And you? What do I call you in front of people? Adrian. Or Adrian?" He paused. "Or, when no one is listening, Clara, you can call me whatever you want." Their eyes met. The library was very quiet. The clock on the mantel ticked. Clara looked away first. The first week was a blur of meetings, lawyers, the family doctor, the company foundation, the press officer who would manage the announcement of Eleanor's return. Clara learned to walk like Eleanor. She learned which side of her hair Eleanor used to part. She learned that Eleanor had been left-handed, and that she would have to be careful when signing in public. The second week, Eli started at a private school 20 minutes away. He came home with color in his cheeks for the first time in a year. The new doctor adjusted his medication. His fever stopped. In the third week, Clara made the mistake of laughing too hard at a joke at dinner. Adrian's mother looked at her with an expression Clara could not read. "You used to laugh exactly like that as a little girl," the older woman said softly. "Before everything went bad, I had forgotten that sound." Clara stared at her plate. She did not know what to say. Later that night, she found Adrian in the library, drinking whiskey by the fire. She sat down across from him. "Tell me about her," she said. "Tell me everything. Not from the folder. From you." Adrian looked at the fire. "She was 4 years older than me. She used to read to me at night when our father was in one of his moods. She had a temper, like him, but it came out in better ways. She defended kids who got picked on at school. She brought home stray dogs. She fought with my father about everything. Politics. Money. The way he spoke to the staff. The way he spoke to our mother. She wanted to study art. He wanted her to study finance. The fight that ended it was about a boy she was seeing. He was the son of one of our gardeners. My father told her if she walked out the front door to see him, she could never come back through it. And she walked out. She walked out." Adrian took a slow sip of whiskey. "I was 14. I watched from the upstairs window. She didn't even take a coat. She turned at the end of the driveway and waved. I never saw her again." Clara was quiet. "Do you think she's alive?" Adrian was quiet for a long time. "I hope she is. I hope she's happy. I hope she's somewhere with a dog and a garden and a husband who loves her. But there have been no traces for over 10 years. The investigators said that pattern usually means one of two things. Either she has built a perfect new identity, or she's been gone for a long, long time." He looked up at Clara. "Either way," he said softly, "she is not coming home tonight. And the company needs to survive. And you," he paused, "are doing something extraordinary for people who don't even know you exist." Clara did not know how to answer that. So she just sat with him by the fire, and they did not speak again until the logs burned down to ash. 6 months came and went. Clara did not leave. The first time the deadline passed, Adrian came to her at breakfast with a quiet expression. "The inheritance has been finalized this morning," he said. "Marcus dropped his motion last week. Legally, you are free. The exit paperwork is ready when you want it." Clara nodded. She thought about it for 2 days. She walked through the rose garden. She watched Eli kick a soccer ball across the lawn with a smile that she had not seen on his face in 2 years. She watched Adrian's mother, who now ate 3 meals a day and slept through the night, who had started painting again for the first time since her husband died. She thought about Boston. The cracked vinyl booth, the blister on her heel, the unopened envelope on the kitchen counter. On the third day, she walked into the library where Adrian was working. "Not yet," she said. He looked up from his desk. He did not ask why. He just nodded. "Not yet." A year passed. Then, another. Clara stopped counting after the second. Eli grew 6 inches. He developed an obsession with chess and a quiet, easy laugh that did not exist when he was a sick child in a Boston apartment. Adrian's mother taught Clara how to arrange flowers from the garden, how to read old letters in a curling, looping script, how to walk into a room of strangers and make them feel that she had been waiting for them all evening. Clara, in return, taught the older woman how to use a smartphone, how to argue with a delivery driver, how to laugh at small things. They became, against all common sense, mother and daughter. Adrian became something else. He became the person Clara saw last at night and first in the morning. He became the person who knew without being told when she needed silence and when she needed someone to argue with her. He became the person who slid a cup of tea across the kitchen island at 4 p.m. every day without saying a word. They were careful. They were always careful. They never sat too close at dinner. They never touched in front of staff. When they walked together in the garden, they kept 3 feet of air between them. In the second year, at a charity gala, a society photographer caught a picture of them laughing together, and a gossip column printed it with the caption, "The closeness of the Vance siblings, who have grown inseparable since Eleanor's return." Adrian taped the article to the wall of his office. He said it was a reminder. Clara understood. She did not ask of what. They never spoke about it. Not once in 3 years. They both knew. Every adult in the house could feel it. Mrs. Halloran, who had served the family for 30 years, would sometimes glance at them with an expression Clara could not read. Maybe pity, maybe knowing, maybe both. But because everyone believed they were brother and sister, no one ever said a word. There was a strange protection in the lie. As long as the world believed they were related by blood, the feeling between them stayed silent, stayed safe, stayed locked in a small room that only they had keys to. There was one night, in the 3rd winter, when something almost broke. It was Christmas Eve. Eli was asleep upstairs. Adrian's mother had gone to bed early. The house was very quiet. The snow was falling outside the tall windows, slow and heavy. Clara was in the library, sitting on the rug near the fireplace, reading. Adrian came in with 2 glasses of wine. He sat down beside her on the rug, closer than usual. Their shoulders touched. He did not move away. Neither did she. They sat like that for a long time, not speaking, watching the fire. Then he said, very quietly, "Clara." It was the first time he had used her real name in over a year. She did not look at him. "Don't," she whispered. "I know." He breathed out. "I'm sorry." "I know. If you say what you're about to say," she said carefully, "I won't be able to live in this house anymore. I won't be able to look at your mother. I won't be able to walk through these rooms. Do you understand?" "I understand." His voice was rough. He paused. "I just needed you to know that I know. That I have always known. That I am not a fool." Clara closed her eyes. A single tear escaped. She did not wipe it away. "I know you know," she said. "I have always known you know." They sat there on the rug for 1 more minute. Then Clara stood up. She kissed the top of his head, very softly, like a sister might. She walked out of the library. She closed the door behind her. She did not come down for breakfast the next morning. By the next afternoon, by some quiet, unspoken agreement, they had returned to who they had to be. The 3rd year ended. The 4th year began. There was a private investigator, hired by a small newspaper, who began calling around about Eleanor Vance in the spring of the 4th year. Adrian's attorneys handled it quietly. But the investigator did not stop. He filed a Freedom of Information request. He spoke to retired teachers. He tracked down a former gardener. He came within 3 weeks of finding a photograph that would have proven Clara was not Eleanor. He was hit by a car in March. He recovered, eventually. But by then, the trail had gone cold. No one in the household ever spoke about that car. Not once. Clara did not ask. She was afraid of the answer. Marcus came back into their lives in the autumn of the 4th year. He had been quiet for a long time. He had even, on one Easter, attended a family lunch and shaken Clara's hand, and asked her politely about the Foundation's new literacy program. She had been almost foolish enough to believe he had given up. Then, a letter arrived. It was hand-delivered, in a cream-colored envelope with no return address, on a Thursday morning in October. It was addressed to Eleanor Vance only. Mrs. Halloran brought it to her on a silver tray. Clara opened it at the kitchen island. Inside was a single photograph and a single sheet of paper. The photograph was of Clara, taken from the side, walking down a sidewalk on Newbury Street 4 years earlier, wearing her diner uniform, carrying a paper bag of groceries. The sheet of paper had 3 sentences on it. "I know who you really are. I have known for some time. We should speak in person." There was no signature. There was a phone number. Clara sat at the island with the letter in her hand for a long time. She did not feel afraid. That was the strange thing. After 4 years, she did not feel afraid. She felt tired. She felt tired the way a person feels who has been running for a long time and finally hears the footsteps behind her and decides, "All right then. Let them catch me." She did not tell Adrian. She did not tell anyone in the house. She put on a coat and called for a car. She met Marcus in a private dining room at a hotel downtown, the kind of place where the staff did not ask questions and the doors locked from the inside. He was already seated when she arrived. There was no food on the table, only a bottle of water and 2 glasses. "Sit down, Clara," he said. She sat. He poured a glass of water for her. "I am going to make you an offer," he said, "and I'd like you to listen carefully before you answer. Is that fair?" "Go on." "I have known for 2 years. I have a sworn deposition from a former waitress at the diner where you worked. I have your fingerprints, taken from a wine glass at last year's Christmas dinner. I have the original Eleanor's dental records from her childhood orthodontist, which do not match the dental records of the woman currently living in my brother's house. I have a complete legal file. I could destroy you with it tomorrow morning. Are we clear?" "We're clear. But I am not going to do that. Because I have come to understand something. The company is doing very well. Adrian has not destroyed it. My nephew, who I once thought was weak, has turned out to be a competent leader. My sister-in-law, who I once thought was a fragile woman, has come back to life under your care. Eli, who is not my blood, but who has lived in my brother's house for 4 years, has become a remarkable young man." He paused. "I do not actually want to burn this house down anymore." Clara waited. "But," Marcus said, "there is something I want, and you are the only person who can give it to me. Tell me." Adrian's father, my brother, did not just have a daughter who left. He also had a son before he married Adrian's mother. An illegitimate son, born in 1978, in Argentina, from an affair he had during a business trip. My brother never acknowledged that child. He paid the mother a small amount of money to disappear. That child grew up in poverty. He is now 45 years old. His name is Tom's. He is my son's biological father. Clara's hand froze on her water glass. "Wait, what?" Marcus's smile was thin. "It's a complicated story. I will explain another time. The short version is, Tom's is my brother's son, and he is also biologically the father of my own son, whom my wife and I adopted when she could not have children. We did not know the connection until 2 years ago. A DNA test for a medical issue revealed it. My son, my own boy, has my brother's blood in him. He has more legitimate claim to the Vance inheritance than Adrian does, by the original terms of the family trust drawn up in 1960. Clara sat back slowly. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to convince Adrian to amend the trust, to recognize Tom's as a legitimate heir, to give my son, his cousin, a seat on the company board and a fair share of the dividends. Not the whole thing. Not control. Just fairness. Just what my brother should have done while he was alive. And if Adrian refuses, then I release my file. The press will eat you alive. Eli will be removed from the household by social services within a week. Adrian will be charged with fraud. The inheritance will be reversed. 2,000 jobs will go anyway. And you, Clara, will go to federal prison. She took a slow sip of water. How long do I have? 2 weeks. After that, the offer expires. I am not a patient man, but I am a fair one. I am giving you the chance to do this quietly. She stood up. I'll think about it. Clara. She paused at the door. Yes? Marcus's voice was soft. He loves you. I have seen him look at you. Whatever you decide, please remember. He has loved you for a very long time. Do not let pride destroy what you have built. Clara walked out of the dining room and did not look back. She walked 5 blocks in the cold before she remembered to call the car. She did not tell Adrian about the meeting that night. She did not tell him the next day. She walked the property in the rain for hours, with her coat collar turned up against the wind. She watched Eli at his school chess tournament that Saturday and pretended to listen as a young teacher in a tweed jacket leaned over and complimented his patience and his unusual ability to think 4 moves ahead at his age. She thought about what Marcus had said. He loves you. I have seen him look at you. She thought about the 4 years she had been in that house. 4 years of careful distance. 4 years of not touching. 4 years of pretending that the quiet thing between them was nothing more than the warmth of 2 people who had been thrown together by circumstance. She thought about Eli, who called Adrian Uncle Adrian, who had taught the boy how to tie a fly fishing knot last summer at the lake, who had stayed up with him through a night of bad dreams the first winter, who had never once made him feel like a guest in this enormous, drafty, gentle house. She thought about the painting Adrian's mother had hung in the front hallway last spring, a portrait of all 4 of them together, the kind of family portrait Clara had not believed she would ever sit for. On the 4th day, she went to Adrian's study after dinner. She closed the door. She told him everything. She did not soften it. She told him about the letter, the photograph, the meeting in the hotel, Marcus's file, Tom's, the boy in Argentina, the trust, the threat. Adrian listened without speaking. When she finished, he sat very still for a long minute. Then he stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the dark lawn. Clara. Yes. Did you ever consider, he said quietly, just running? Yes. When? Every day for 4 years, and especially today. He nodded slowly. Why didn't you? She did not answer right away. The fire in the grate snapped. The clock on the mantel ticked. Finally, she said, because I'm not Eleanor. But I am Eli's mother, and I am your mother's daughter, in every way that matters now. And I am in every way that matters the person who has been sitting across from you at breakfast for 4 years. If I run, I lose all of that. And I have nothing else. Adrian turned around. He looked at her for a long time. Then he said, I will not amend the trust, because Marcus is blackmailing us. But I will amend it because, after everything, it is the right thing to do. If Tom's exists, and if he is my father's son, then he deserves a fair seat at this table. I will not let Marcus take credit for it. I will announce the amendment myself, publicly, on my own terms, next month at the Foundation Gala. And then Marcus's leverage is gone. Clara breathed out. He may still release the file. He may. Adrian crossed the room and stopped a foot away from her. Clara. I have known for 4 years that one day we would have to choose. We would have to walk into the truth, or we would have to walk away from each other. I cannot walk away from you. I will not. So we walk into the truth. She swallowed. And what does that look like? I don't know yet. He almost smiled. But it starts with not running. 2 weeks later, Adrian called a board meeting and presented documentation of his half-brother Tom's existence. He proposed an amendment to the family trust that would recognize Tom's and grant him a fair share. The board approved unanimously. Tom's was flown in from Buenos Aires the following week. He turned out to be a quiet, kind man who taught middle school mathematics and who had never expected anything from the Vance family. He hugged Adrian when they met. He said, in soft, careful English, "I am glad to know my brother." Marcus, watching from the side of the room, said nothing. His leverage was gone. Or so they thought. 3 months later, in the early spring of the 5th year, a young woman walked up the driveway of the Vance house at 11 in the morning. She had a small leather suitcase. She was in her mid-40s. She had red hair, threaded with gray. She had green eyes. She rang the bell. Mrs. Halloran answered the door. Mrs. Halloran had served the family for 30 years. Mrs. Halloran had known Eleanor as a teenager. When Mrs. Halloran opened the door, she dropped the tea tray she was carrying. It shattered on the marble floor. "Oh, dear God," Mrs. Halloran whispered. "Oh, dear God in heaven." The woman on the doorstep smiled, a tired, slightly sad smile. "Hello, Mrs. Halloran," she said. "I'm sorry I've been away so long. May I come in?" Mrs. Halloran could not speak. She simply stepped backward and pulled open the door. The woman walked into the foyer. She set her suitcase down. She looked up at the staircase, at the portraits on the wall, at the rug she had spilled paint on as a child. "It's smaller than I remembered," she said softly. From the top of the staircase, Adrian's mother appeared. She was wearing her gardening clothes. She had a small pair of shears in her hand. She looked down. She saw the woman in the foyer. The shears fell out of her hand and clattered on the floor. "Eleanor," she whispered. The woman in the foyer looked up. Her eyes filled with tears. "Hello, Mom," she said. "I came home, and upstairs in the music room, Clara, sitting at the piano, heard the cry that came out of Adrian's mother, and she knew, instantly, without being told, that everything she had built over 4.5 years had just ended." Clara did not move from the piano bench. She heard Adrian's mother sob downstairs. She heard a second voice answer, a woman's voice she had never heard before, low and warm and a little hoarse. She heard Mrs. Halloran's footsteps moving fast across the marble. She heard Adrian's mother say, over and over, "My baby, my baby, my baby." Clara closed the piano lid. She stood up. She walked to the small powder room next to the music room and washed her face with cold water. She looked at herself in the mirror. She did not look like a woman who had been caught. She looked like a woman who had finally stopped running. She walked down the back staircase, into the kitchen, into the side hall. She did not enter the foyer. She went to the room she had slept in for almost 5 years. She opened her closet. She took out a small leather suitcase, the same one she had brought from Boston, the one she had not used since. She began to pack. She packed 2 changes of clothes, her toothbrush, the photograph of her mother, the drawing Eli had made of the 4 of them last Christmas. She closed the suitcase. She sat on the edge of the bed. Eli would be home from school in 3 hours. She would have to find a way to tell him. She did not know how. There was a soft knock on her bedroom door. Adrian opened it without waiting. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. He stood with his back against it. He had seen the suitcase. "Don't," he said. "Adrian, please, don't. She is in the foyer, your real sister. Eleanor. She came home. After 25 years, she came home." Clara stood up. "It's over. I have to go. Stop." His voice was sharper than she had ever heard it. "Listen to me. We talk to her. All of us. Together. We tell her everything. We do not run. We do not lie. We tell her the truth. And then, we ask her what she wants to do. Adrian, this isn't a thing we can negotiate. The whole world is going to know what I am by tomorrow morning. I lied to your mother for almost 5 years. I let her hug me. I let her call me her daughter. I let Eli call her grandmother. The moment Eleanor walks into a room with me, every person on this property will know. The staff, the lawyers, the board, the press will have it by Tuesday. I know. He stepped toward her. I know all of that. And I am still asking you to stay in this room for 1 more hour while we talk to her downstairs. Will you do that? Clara looked at him. He had not slept in 2 nights. His tie was crooked. His eyes were red. She nodded. He left the room. She sat back down on the bed. She did not unpack the suitcase, but she did not pick it up either. 40 minutes later, Mrs. Halloran came up the stairs and tapped on the door. "Miss," she said softly, "they're asking for you. In the library." Clara walked down the stairs slowly, her hand on the banister. She had walked down these stairs 1,000 times in 5 years. She did not know how to walk down them as herself. She paused in the doorway of the library. Adrian was sitting on the leather couch. His mother was beside him, holding his hand, her face streaked with tears. Across from them, in the armchair by the fire, sat the real Eleanor Vance. Clara had not been ready for her. She had pictured a stranger. But the woman in the chair had Adrian's nose, his mother's chin, and a quiet, watchful expression that was so familiar Clara almost couldn't breathe. Eleanor stood up when she saw Clara. The 2 women looked at each other across the room. Then, slowly, Eleanor crossed to her. She took Clara's hands. Her grip was firm. Her eyes were not angry. "My brother," Eleanor said softly, "and my mother have just told me everything. They told me that you saved this house. They told me that you cared for my mother every single day for almost 5 years. They told me that you raised a child in this house with kindness. They told me that you are not a thief. They told me that you are the best thing that ever happened to this family. Is all of that true?" Clara's throat was so tight she could not answer. "Sit down, Clara," Eleanor said gently. "All of you. I need to tell you where I have been." They sat. Eleanor sat back down in the armchair. She folded her hands in her lap. She looked into the fire. "I have been in Mexico, mostly," she said. "And then Argentina, for a long time. And then, for the last 6 years in a small town in northern Spain, by the sea. I have been a painter. I have been married. Briefly. I have been happy. Mostly. I did not write home because I was 19 years old when I left, and I was very angry at our father. And then I was 25 and ashamed. And then I was 35, and the time had gotten away from me. I read about father's death 3 years ago. In a newspaper, in a cafe in Madrid. I did not come home then because I did not know how. I told myself you were all better off." She paused. She looked up at Adrian. "Then last month, in the same cafe, I read an article about a young man in Argentina named Tom's being recognized publicly as father's son. I read that my brother Adrian had done it without being asked. That was the article that brought me home. The library was silent for a long time." The fire crackled. Adrian's mother wiped her eyes with the same handkerchief she had used the first night Clara had ever walked into this family's life. Eleanor looked at Clara. "I do not want the inheritance," she said. "I have a quiet life. I have a small house. I have a man who loves me. I came home to see my mother before she leaves this world. I came home to meet my brother again. I came home to thank the woman who took care of my family when I could not. I did not come home to take anything from any of you." Clara stared at her. She could not yet believe what she was hearing. "Eleanor," she said quietly, "I have to ask. Do you understand what I have done? Legally?" "I understand. If you go to the press, or to the courts, you can have me prosecuted. You can have Adrian prosecuted. The inheritance can be reversed. The trust can be undone. I am aware. Eleanor's voice was steady. And I am not going to do any of those things. I am going to do exactly the opposite. I am going to sign a statement, drawn up by Adrian's attorneys, in which I confirm that I have been in regular private contact with my brother for the past 5 years, that the woman who has been representing the family in my absence is doing so with my full knowledge and blessing, and that I have chosen to remain abroad for personal reasons. The press, if they ever ask, will be told a slightly tidier version of the same story. Clara stared. Why? Eleanor finally smiled. It was the first real smile Clara had seen on her face. Because this family has had enough drama for 1 century, Clara. And because the inheritance was never the point. My father wanted to control me. The will was his last attempt. I will not let him win, even from the grave. The company belongs to Adrian. The house belongs to my mother. And whatever future you and my brother choose to build, that belongs to you. She paused. I assume there is a future for the two of you. She looked at Adrian. Adrian looked at the floor. He did not deny it. I thought so, Eleanor said softly. Mrs. Halloran said as much to me 5 minutes ago, in the kitchen. She has been watching the two of you for years. Adrian's mother lifted her head. I have been watching too, she said quietly. Everyone turned. The older woman was looking at her hands. I am not as foolish as I seem, she said. I knew within the first year that something was different about you, Clara. Your eyes were not Eleanor's eyes. They were green, not gray. I noticed the 3rd week. I almost said something. And then I watched you with my son. I watched you with Eli. I watched the way you put your hand on my shoulder when I cried about my husband. And I made a choice. She looked up. I chose to keep you. I chose not to ask questions. I chose to call you my daughter, because by then, you were. I do not know what your real name is. I am not sure I want to. You have been my daughter for almost 5 years. You are still my daughter. Whatever happens next. Clara's face was wet. She had not realized she was crying. My name is Clara, she whispered. Clara Bennett. Then you are Clara Bennett now, Adrian's mother said. And you have been Eleanor Vance, and you may be something else tomorrow, but you are still my daughter, in this house. Eleanor reached over and took her mother's hand. The two women looked at each other for a long time. Eleanor stood up. I would like to meet Eli, she said. And then I would like to go for a walk in the garden. And then I would like to have dinner with all of you, and to be introduced as Aunt Ellie, who has lived in Spain for many years, and who has come home for a long visit. She paused at the door. And then, Adrian, and you, Clara, you will tell each other what you have not been able to tell each other for years. I have not come 3,000 miles to watch the two of you waste another month. She walked out of the library. Mrs. Halloran could be heard greeting her in the hallway. The library was quiet. Adrian sat very still. Clara sat very still. Adrian's mother stood up. I am going upstairs to nap, she said, and the two of you are going for a walk. She kissed the top of Clara's head as she passed. She paused at the door. Clara. Yes, Mom. I always knew. Then, she was gone. Clara and Adrian sat in the silent library for a full minute without looking at each other. Then, he stood up. He held out his hand. She took it. They walked out of the library, through the foyer, past the suitcase still on the floor, out the front door, and down the steps into the cold spring sunlight. They walked, hand in hand, for the first time in almost 5 years, down the long driveway lined with maples. They did not speak for a long time. Halfway down the drive, Adrian stopped. He turned to her. He put his hands on her face. He kissed her. Finally. Fully. Without hiding. Without flinching. Without pulling away. When he pulled back, he was almost laughing. "I have wanted to do that," he said, "for 4 years, 11 months, and 9 days. Clara, crying and laughing at the same time, said, "I've been counting too." The next 6 months were stranger than any of the years that had come before. Eleanor stayed in the house for 3 weeks. She and Clara took long walks together in the garden. They drank wine in the conservatory at night. Eleanor told her stories about being a girl in this house, about the brother she remembered, about the mother she had run from. Clara, in return, told Eleanor about the diner, about Eli's first fever, about the night Adrian had walked into her life with a folded $100 bill. Eleanor laughed until she cried at parts of it. "You have lived 3 lives," Eleanor said one night, "where I have only managed to live 1. Tom's came up from Argentina for 2 of those weeks. He and Eleanor became unlikely friends. He taught her chess. She taught him how to argue with their mother in the polite, indirect way that the family used. The press, when they finally caught the scent of something off about the Vance family story, were given a clean, prepared narrative by Adrian's communications team. Eleanor had been living abroad in seclusion for personal reasons. Eleanor's representative, a longtime family friend named Clara Bennett, had been managing certain family matters during her absence. Eleanor had now returned to formally retire from any family obligations and to spend the rest of her years as a private citizen in Spain. The press accepted it because Eleanor sat for one careful, gracious interview with a respected magazine and confirmed every word. There were a few skeptics. There were 1 or 2 columns hinting that there were holes in the story. But by then, the Vance family had closed ranks. Mrs. Halloran, who knew everything, said nothing to anyone. The board, which had been quietly briefed by Adrian, said nothing. Marcus, who had been outmaneuvered in every direction, said nothing. He attended the spring shareholder meeting. He shook Adrian's hand. He even, at the end of the meeting, walked over to Clara and said, in a voice meant only for her, "You played that better than I expected. My respect." Clara, for the first time since she had met him, smiled. "Thank you, Uncle Marcus," she said. He nodded. He walked away. They never had another adversarial conversation again. Eli, who had been told a careful version of the truth by Clara one evening at the lake, sat with the information for 2 days. Then he came back to her at breakfast and said, "Very seriously, Mom, are we still us?" "Yes, baby," Clara had said. "We are still us. We are just us in a different way." "Then it's fine," Eli had said, and asked for more toast. He had always been a remarkably uncomplicated child. The wedding took place in the autumn of that year. It was small. It was held in the rose garden behind the house, on a Saturday in October, almost exactly 5 years to the day after Adrian had walked into a diner in Boston. There were 40 guests. Eleanor flew in from Spain with her husband, a quiet, smiling man named Mateo, who spoke very little English and seemed to like everyone immediately. Tom's came up from Argentina with his wife and their 2 children. Mrs. Halloran cried throughout the entire ceremony. Adrian's mother walked Clara down the makeshift aisle of stone pavers. Halfway down, she stopped and whispered into Clara's ear, "I waited 5 years to do this. Do not rush me." Clara laughed into her bouquet. Eli, almost 14 now, taller than his mother by 2 inches, stood beside Adrian at the front. He had been chosen as the best man. He had written his own toast. He had practiced it for 3 weeks. When it was time to read the vows, Adrian went first. He held Clara's hands. He looked at her for a long moment. "Clara Bennett," he said, "I met you on the worst night of my life, in a diner with a flickering light, when I was about to lose everything that I cared about. You walked over to my table, and you saved me with a small, impossible lie. Then you saved me again, every day, for 5 years, with the truth of who you are. You taught me that family is not blood. You taught me that integrity is not the absence of secrets. It is what you do with them. You taught me what kind of man I want to be. Today, in front of my mother and my sister and my brother and my friends and your son, who is now our son, I promise you that I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the woman you have already been to me. Clara, crying openly now, took a slow breath. Adrian Vance, she said, 5 years ago, I was a woman with a sick brother and an unpaid bill and a blister on my heel. I walked into a dinner with strangers because I had run out of options. I walked out with a family I did not deserve and a feeling for you that I was not allowed to have. I spent 5 years choosing this house. I spent 5 years choosing your mother. I spent 5 years choosing Eli's safety. I spent 5 years choosing you. I chose you when I was not supposed to. I choose you now when I am finally allowed to. I will choose you every day for the rest of my life. They exchanged simple gold rings. They kissed. The garden erupted in applause. Eleanor wiped her eyes. Adrian's mother held Eli's hand and did not let go. Marcus, who had been invited at the last minute and had, to everyone's surprise, accepted, raised his glass from the back of the garden and inclined his head once toward Clara. It was the smallest blessing he was capable of, and it was enough. A year later, Clara stood on a small balcony off the upstairs library, holding a cup of tea. Eli was at school. Adrian was in a meeting in the city. Adrian's mother was downstairs, painting a portrait of her 2 grown children, one real and one chosen. Eleanor was in Spain. Tom's was in Argentina. Marcus, against all expectation, was having lunch downstairs with the new chief financial officer. Mrs. Halloran had retired to a cottage in Maine, where she sent Clara a postcard every other week. Clara took a sip of her tea. She thought about the woman she had been 5 years ago, in a cracked vinyl booth with a coffee pot in her hand, exhausted, with a sick brother at home and an unopened envelope on her counter. That woman would not have believed the woman on the balcony existed. She would have thought it was a fairy tale. And in a way, it was. It was also, somehow, true. There was a soft cry from the bedroom behind her. Clara smiled. She set down her tea. She walked back into the room. The baby, 2 months old, blinked up at her from the white bassinet by the window. Her name was Margaret, after Adrian's mother, and Bennett, after Clara. Clara picked her up. She held her close. She walked to the window and showed her the garden, the maples burning red in the autumn light, the long driveway she had once been carried up at midnight in another woman's clothes. "This is our house, baby," she whispered. "This is where you live. This is where you are safe. This is where everyone in this family will protect you, no matter what." The baby blinked sleepily and yawned. Clara sat down in the rocking chair by the window. She rocked her daughter slowly. She thought about the lie that had started everything, the lie that had cost her almost 5 years of careful pretending, the lie that had become, somehow, the truest life she had ever known. She thought about Adrian, who would walk through the door at 6, kiss her forehead before he even took off his coat, lift their daughter out of her arms, and dance her once around the bedroom. She thought about Eli, who would come home from school and tell her about a chess match, who would call her mom in the same easy voice he had always used. She thought about the woman she had been. She thought about the woman she had become. And she understood, finally, what the older woman in the foyer had told her on the day everything had almost ended. "You are still my daughter. Whatever happens next, some lies destroy a life. Some lies, told for the right reasons, by the right people, in the right house, become a kind of truth that no honest beginning could have ever built. What did you think of Clara and Adrian's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate this story? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our stories.